Good afternoon, fellow Toastmasters once again. Let me start with a question. How many of you have made a bet? Whether it's Toto, 4D, or you're betting on your cricket match, who is the winner? In a bet, you risk gaining or losing something of value based on the outcome of an unpredictable event. And I find it so fascinating because there's a sense of challenge even though you have little to no control over the outcome. And the emotion it brings, there's a sense of anticipation, hope, a chance you can be right. But at the same time, you're a bit nervous. What if I get it wrong? You're anxious, especially if the stakes are high. We make small bets in our lives every other day, which brings about small wins and losses. But what happens when you make a bet that is so big that it changes your whole life? Today, allow me to share with you a story of 3 different groups of people who made the same bet and then had their lives changed based on a single event in time. Going back to 2005, it was the golden era. Banks were booming, people were making money, buying houses, buying cars. A hedge fund manager, known for his knack in picking up undervalued stock, started scrolling through the underlying assets in the bond, reading through pages of Excel sheets, boring stuff that nobody really bothered to look at. And he found something interesting. In a mortgage-backed securities, which is supposed to be backed by AAA bonds, it is not so much so. They were actually made up of risky adjustable rates bonds, which would eventually kick in, and that means that when the rates went up, the rates of default will also increase. And when it crosses a threshold, the whole bond becomes worthless. Now, this was a time when people thought the property market was never going to fall. It was rock solid. It was always going up. Even the Fed chairman then, Alan Greenspan, commented that the defaults are very rare in the US market. His boss didn't believe him either when he told him that he saw something was going on. But this fund manager was adamant. He spotted something, he believed it, and so what did he do? He placed a bet against these mortgage-backed securities, and he poured his investors' funds into it. Just across the road, a banker was pitching the sales of credit default swaps to another hedge fund manager. His saying is that the housing market was about to go bust, and if you bet against it, you will make a windfall. The banker explained that these mortgage-backed security bonds were like a stack of Jenga. You have the triple A's, you have the A's, you have the B's, triple B's, and you have the B's right at the bottom. And they all packaged together, and it was given an average rating because it's diversified. So in good times, everything's going well. Nothing will happen. But what happens when the rates start going up? Starting from the bottom, the B's, the single B's, they'll start defaulting. So you can imagine the Jenga. The B's start coming out. Then it will affect the triple B's. Then it will affect the A's and the triple A's. And eventually, the Jenga will collapse. And it was only a matter of time. After hearing this, the hedge fund manager went down to do their own research by doing a field investigation. They flew down to Florida and went to the actual neighborhoods to see what was going on. To their surprise, they saw houses that were empty. People were not living in them. General public, like people who are store owners, who are laymen, were taking up more than they could take up in mortgages. There was an example where a show lady had 5 mortgages under her. Mortgage brokers were approving loans unscrupulously. Why? Because they could sell it off to the banks. They could pass on the risk. So why not just sell as much as make as much as they can? Upon seeing this situation, the hedge fund managers was convinced of what the banker said, and so they decided to put a bet to buy these credit default swaps and bet against the housing market. Yet, in another backyard, a small hedge fund was headed by 2 young investors. Their overall strategy was to buy insurance at cheap prices so that they can get a good payout in the event that it happened. So this is like insurance. And this particular credit default swaps played nicely into their forte. Together with the help of a securities trader, they entered the bet, and they betted against higher rating AA securities, which are considered very stable and carried a much higher payout. So if this story sounds familiar to you, it's because they are characters from the movie The Big Short, based on the 2008 subprime crisis. We all know how the story ends. The 2008, the bubble pops, market crashes, our three hedge funds who betted against the market wins big. The first fund saw an increase in value by a whopping 489%. Second fund manager made over $1 billion based on the swaps itself. The banker who was pitching the credit default swaps, he received a bonus of $47 million.
Jesus.
And the pair of fund managers turned their $30 million investment into $80 million, which is quite amazing for a pair of rookies without the credentials of the big names like Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan. What a life-changing bet that paid off. Surprisingly, this show did not end off on a good, positive vibe, even though our three heroes end up winning the bet. Instead, we are presented with a devastating impact of the market collapse. Approximately 8.7 to 9 million jobs just in the US were lost. 1 in every 54 homes were foreclosed. Economy entered a recession and affected the whole world. And even Singapore was affected. I'm sure that those of us who were already in the workforce felt the impacts and experienced a tough time during the 2008 crisis. In a bet, there will always be winners and losers. And in this case, the losers are the general public. Is it worth it? That's for us to reflect. But no matter which side we are on, it is definitely a bet that changed the lives of these three fund managers and millions of lives that were affected by the crisis around the world. Thank you.
It's a banker that